Eamon Javers in D.C.'s had a chance to look through the decision and maybe get us a count as well, Eamon.
Yeah, Carl, that's right. The Supreme Court has now ruled against the President of the United States on this issue of whether his tariffs of 2025 were legal or not. Here's the key sentence from the ruling. The Supreme Court says the judgment of the United States Court of Appeals for the Federal Circuit, that is the lower court in this case, is affirmed. Now, remember, the lower court said that IEEPA, the law here in question, does not allow the president to unilaterally impose, revoke, pause, reinstate, and adjust tariffs to reorder the global economy. So the lower court said that the law here in question did not give the president that authority. And what we see here is the Supreme Court is upholding that lower court ruling. And I'm going to just find here another sentence, which is, I think, the key to the court's analysis here. And what they're saying is, based on two words separated by 16 other words in Section 1702A of IEEPA, the words regulate and importation, the president asserts the independent power to impose tariffs on imports from any country of any product at any rate for any amount of time. Those words, the Supreme Court says, cannot bear such weight. So what the Supreme Court appears to have decided here, guys, is that ultimately the IEEPA statute was about regulation of imports, not about tariffing of imports. And if Congress had intended for it to be about tariffing of imports, it would have said so explicitly. And because it did not, therefore, the president does not have the power to interpret this law in such a broad way as he did. Now, what is the impact of this? Immediately, this is going to set off the food fight of all food fights in terms of how companies that paid those tariffs last year get reimbursed. The president of the United States has said that the U.S. government will in some way have to reimburse those tariffs, but the cost is so high to the Treasury. The president has suggested that the U.S. government may not be able to do that. So what kind of a situation are we going to have for companies that are trying to get reimbursed this year? That's going to be a fascinating fight. Whether or not the government tries to slow walk that or find some loophole or carve out, we'll see deeper down in this decision by the Supreme Court if they've given any guidance as to how that process should work. We don't have that right now. That might be material for a number of these companies, guys. So as we look through this, what we're seeing here is a striking decision by the Supreme Court against the President of the United States. We're also seeing here a lengthy dissent here from Justice Kavanaugh. So we'll get into his logic on why he's dissenting as we dive deeper into this, guys. Back over to you.
Are you going with a 6-3 vote?
Yeah, I don't have the vote here in front of me, Carl. We're still looking at the actual language of the decision. So it looks like I'm being given here by our fantastic producer. Yes, 6-3 decision. So as I was reading that, we've been able to pin this down. So yes, 6-3 decision. So that is not the 9-0 decision that we've been talking about, even on Squawk Box this morning, the possibility of having a 9-0 unanimous decision. This is a divided court, a 6-3 decision here ultimately. And we'll wait for the president's reaction. The president has said this is one of the most important decisions the Supreme Court will ever render because it gives him unilateral negotiating power, the leverage that unbridled tariff authority gives the President of the United States in terms of negotiating with countries around the world is enormous. The President has enjoyed that leverage in order to force countries to the negotiating table. The President has said if he loses this case, that will rob him of that leverage and deprive him of the ability to help the U.S. Government in all of the negotiations that it has everywhere around the world. I would expect a blistering statement on Truth Social here at some point shortly.
Thomas, Kavanaugh, and Alito were in dissent here, but importantly, Gorsuch, Barrett, and Roberts, obviously, part of that majority. Eamon, you know, backing up a bit, I mean, it does simply seem that the Supreme Court has reaffirmed that the Constitution gives Congress the right to levy taxes and tariffs and not the president, correct?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And the Congress would have the authority to designate that to the President of the United States if they wanted to. And what the president did by looking at this IEEPA law, remember, that's the law, the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, that the president cited as giving him the authority to impose these tariffs on Liberation Day in the first place. What the president did was stretch that law a lot farther than it had ever been stretched before by saying that this power to regulate international commerce also includes the power to tax it. And taxing power, of course, under the Constitution belongs to Congress. Now, they could send some of that power down Pennsylvania Avenue to the president if they wanted to. And what the Supreme Court is saying here is, well, they didn't do that in this law. The president is arguing that they did, but they certainly didn't. And if Congress had wanted to do that, they would have done it in a very explicit way that it wouldn't require a tortured reading of the statute to come up with this interpretation. It would just say it in its plain face in the law, and that's not what happened here. And so this is a huge reversal for the Trump administration. The administration, we should say, has suggested that if they lost this case, they would have a number of other authorities, and they would be able to convert their tariffs to these other authorities in relatively short order. What are some of those authorities? Section 338, Section 232, Section 301, Section 122, all sorts of other authorities that the the executive branch would have to impose tariffs are in play here, but all of them require some sort of lengthier process, and they don't give the immediacy that the president has really enjoyed using this novel interpretation of IEEPA, which has now been struck down. You have to go through an investigation. You have to have a report and a finding. All of that takes a certain time on the clock in terms of the calendar. That doesn't give the president the unilateral, immediate, sort of truth social, real-time power to impose tariffs that he has believed he enjoyed all year long. This is going to be deeply, deeply frustrating for the president of the United States.
And just to put a number on how much we're talking about, according to estimates out there, $133.5 billion of tariff revenue has been collected under IEEPA specifically in fiscal year 25 and fiscal year 26 through December 14th. It's according to Cato and some of the estimates. So $133.5 billion. The question is going to be on the potential implications now about whether that gets returned and to who and how that all plays out.
And that's why I say it's going to be a huge be a huge food fight in terms of how that money gets distributed and who it gets distributed to. 133 billion is our best guess, Sarah. You're right. That is the current number. It's probably higher than that. We just don't have the latest numbers in yet. But remember, it's not all of the tariff revenue that the administration has collected. 293 billion have been collected overall in the president's second term now. So a big, big chunk of the president's tariff revenue, but not all of it, is now being struck down by the Supreme Court here.